11 other climbers died trying to conquer the world's second highest peak.
In 2008, the climbing world was rocked by one of the deadliest disasters in the history of mountaineering. On the towering peak of K2, 11 climbers lost their lives in an event that has become known as the K2 disaster. This tragedy serves as a poignant reminder of the risks involved in attempting to climb this formidable summit. This is the story of the infamous K2 disaster of 2008 and how it changed the climbing world. The story behind the K2 disaster of 2008 is convoluted, controversial, and still not entirely clear. One of the main reasons for this is that the expedition team comprised 31 climbers from 8 different countries, such as Norway, the USA, France, and the Netherlands, many of whom gave contradictory statements after surviving this disaster. Knowing the names of the key climbers and their respective teams helps to understand the events better. The climbers you'll need to know are Norwegian team, Lars Nessa, Rolf Ba, and Cecilia Skog. The last two were married. Norway team, Wilco van Rooyen, Kas van de Hevel, Jer McDonnell, and Pemba Galje Sherpa. Korean team, Kyung Hyo Park, Hyo Jung Kim, Dong Jin Hwang, 2 Sherpas, Jumik Boat and Pasong Boat, and team leader Mr. Kim. American team, Eric Meyer, Frederick Strang. Serbian team, Dren Mandic, Predrag Zagorec, and Diso Planic. French team, Hugues Dobared, and a high-altitude porter, Jahan Beg. Soloists, Alberto Zarain, Marco Confortola. Out of the climbers mentioned, one of the most famous is Jer McDonnell. He was an Irish mountaineer and the first Irish person to summit K2. He was a member of the Norway team that was on the K2 expedition in 2008. McDonnell is known for his incredible climbing skills and his passion for the mountains. He had already summited several other 8,000-meter peaks before his attempt on K2. Another famous mountaineer in this sad story is Wilco van Rooyen. He was a Dutch mountaineer who had previously climbed several other 8,000-meter peaks, including the 7 summits. He was the leader of the Norway team, which participated in the K2 expedition in 2008. The most notable name in this whole story is that of a Nepalese Sherpa. Pemba Galje Sherpa is a renowned Nepalese mountaineer who was a member of the Norway team that was on the K2 expedition in 2008. Before diving into the tragic events, let us first delve deep into the dynamics of the trek. The teams had agreed to work together to set fixed ropes to give everyone a chance to summit K2 in a safe and speedy manner. But due to various reasons, this plan did not work as intended. The high-altitude porters were responsible for fixing the ropes, but their leader fell ill and no one was administering the porters. The Korean team was supposed to double-check the fixed ropes, but they did not. This led to insufficient rope for the latter portions of the climb. The teams then had to face the decision of returning to retrieve the rope, which resulted in lost time. By the time the majority of the climbers reached the bottleneck, it was very late, around 4 p.m. There was not enough time to summit K2 and descend within the daylight. The teams were faced with a tough dilemma. Should we establish camp here, or should we continue to the summit? One of the first fatalities occurred at the bottleneck, where a Serbian climber, Dren Mandic, unclipped his rope to get past his fellow climber, Cecilia Skog. He accidentally fell sliding down the bottleneck. Although he stood up, it was clear that something was physically wrong with him. The climbers at the bottleneck had a conversation about whether or not some of them should go down to help him, but most of them continued on with their summit push, leaving Dren behind. Frederick Strang decided to climb higher to reach Dren and provide him with some assistance, but when he arrived, Dren had already met his fate. His life was cut short due to this tragic accident. Strang and other climbers decided to bring Dren back down to Camp 4 for a proper burial, but during this descent, the second fatality occurred. Jahan Beg, a Pakistani high-altitude porter, set out to help the others retrieve Dren's body. During the rescue, he lost his footing and fell into the abyss. The remaining team members reached the summit without further mishaps. Spanish climber Alberto Zarain was the first to reach the summit and descend. He later narrated that during his descent, he passed the Norwegian team while they were on their way up. He told Lars Nessa that it was only about 1 hour to the summit from the position they were in, meaning that the Norwegian team should have reached the summit within 1 hour. And they did. The majority of the climbers reached the summit between 5 to 7 p.m., but during their descent, the horrors really began. As the climbers descended, an ice wall swept Rolf Baugh off the line in front of his wife, tragically ending his life. The same icefall also cut the fixed ropes, the only way to get down. As the darkness deepened, the 15 remaining climbers progressed slowly, eventually reaching the Korean team and deciding to descend in a more organized manner attached to one rope. But little did they know that this decision would seal their fate. As they descended, climbers began to fall one by one, disappearing into the darkness. One of the unfortunate climbers was Karim Meherban. While he was descending the mountain, tragedy struck when a large chunk of ice dislodged itself from the mountain and came crashing down towards Karim. The falling ice hit him with full force, and he was knocked off the mountain, plummeting down onto the rocks below. As Karim was falling, Hugues Doberet, a French climber, witnessed the tragedy and rushed to help Karim. Hugues managed to reach Karim's body and carry him to a lower altitude for medical attention. Unfortunately, it was too late, and Karim had already passed away. Hugues, however, was determined to bring Karim's body back down the mountain, and he started his descent with Karim's body in tow. But as Hugues was making his way down, he suddenly collapsed. He had been severely weakened by the altitude and the cold and had no energy left to continue. His fellow climbers rushed to help him, but it was too late. Hugues had succumbed to the elements and died shortly after. As the sun rose on August 2, 2008, the reality of the disaster on K2 began to unfold. The bivouacking climbers, Ger McDonnell, Wilco van Rooyen, and Marco Confortola, quickly realized that the fixed ropes that were their lifelines had been swept away by an icefall. Van Rooyen, struck by snow blindness, desperately made his way down the mountain, coming across the Korean team hanging on a snow ledge. But as he approached, he saw that 2 of the climbers were not moving. All 3 were tangled in the rope that had been left with them after they stopped above the traverse, and the other climbers clipped off. Van Rooyen gave the moving climber his spare gloves and continued down to Camp 4, unable to help further. Amidst the chaos and destruction, one man emerged as a true hero. Gerald MacDonald, the Irish mountaineer, refused to abandon his fellow climbers, even in the face of certain death. This happened when Pemba Dorji, from the safety of Camp 4, snapped photos of the hanging climbers, as the Korean team leader suggested a rescue mission. But the American team said that they didn't have enough manpower, and Strang, who had attempted to save Mondik earlier, also declined, citing that the 3 climbers looked lifeless. As the Korean team became stranded on an icy ledge, Ger refused to leave them behind. Instead, he stayed with them. He worked tirelessly to free them from their bindings and attempted to guide them down to safety. Despite the treacherous conditions and his own fatigue, Ger's selflessness and bravery saved the lives of the 3 Korean climbers and their Sherpa. His actions were truly heroic, putting the lives of others before his own. Ger will always be remembered as the guardian of the mountain, a true hero whose actions saved the lives of others during one of the worst disasters in mountaineering history. What makes the K2 disaster even more perplexing are some of the controversial stories of the survivors. At the morning after the disaster, it was clear that the fate of the climbers on K2 had taken a deadly turn. The aftermath of the previous night's events was shrouded in mystery and uncertainty, leaving many questions unanswered. One climber, Marco Confortola, would go on to become a controversial figure in the tragedy, with stories of heroism and claims of poor equipment and inexperience. But as the climbers and families sifted through the accident, discrepancies in this account began to surface. Confortola had made claims of attempting to save other climbers and blamed the disaster on inexperience and poor equipment. But as more survivors came forward with their own accounts, people started to understand what had actually transpired. Ger McDonald's family flew to Islamabad to meet with Wilco van Rooyen, one of the survivors. They were shocked to hear that Confortola had claimed he and Ger had bivouacked above the fixed ropes, with Rooyen joining later. But Rooyen disputed this, saying all 3 started and bivouacked together, and that he was always with them, disputing the claim of Confortola, who said that Rooyen joined them later. Soon enough, the truth of the tragic accident's events slowly began to unveil itself. One man, Pemba, held the key to unlocking the mysteries of what truly occurred on that fateful climb. With his trusty camera, he captured the events as they unfolded, providing a first-hand account of the tragedy that befell K2's peak. But as Pemba's version of events began to surface, Marco Confortola's web of lies began to unravel. Pemba's account of finding Marco below the bottleneck painted a picture of a man on the brink of madness, cursing and crying, clearly suffering from hypoxia. But it was the photographs on Pemba's camera that proved to be the most damning evidence against Marco's version of events. The photographs showed that it was not Marco, but Jer McDonald who had stayed behind to help the Koreans. And in a heartbreaking twist, the photographs also revealed that it was Jer who had freed the two Sherpas from their bindings before he too was swept away by an icefall. As the truth of the 2008 K2 disaster slowly came to light, it became clear that Marco's story was just that, a story. And in the end, it was the selfless actions of Jer McDonald that would forever be remembered in the annals of mountaineering history. Despite Jer's heroics, it is an undisputable truth that several climbers lost their lives that day. In total, 11 men: Kim Hyo, Park Kyung, and Hwang Dong from Korea, Jimik Boat and Pasang Boat from Nepal, Jahan Beg and Karim Meherban from Pakistan, Hugh Doberet from France, Jer McDonald from Ireland, Dren Mandik from Serbia, and Rolf Ba from Norway died over a 24-hour period on K2. The 2008 K2 disaster sent shockwaves throughout the climbing community, leaving many questioning the ethics and responsibility of those leading expeditions on treacherous peaks. The tragedy, which resulted in the deaths of 11 climbers, brought to light the dangers of climbing without proper experience and equipment. It also raised questions about the decision-making process during rescue attempts and the moral obligations of climbers to assist their fellow mountaineers in need. The devastating events on K2 prompted a reevaluation of protocols and regulations within the climbing community, leading to a renewed emphasis on safety and preparedness. It was a harsh reminder of the brutal realities of climbing and the ultimate sacrifice that some are willing to make in the pursuit of reaching the summit. It remains one of the most devastating and controversial disasters in the history of mountaineering, a tragic event that left a lasting impact on the climbing community. Where did the avalanche come from which swept Karim Meherban and Hugh? No one knows for sure. And what caused the Korean team to be found hanging on an ice ledge? Their bodies were never found. Did any of them survive? These questions may never be answered. But one thing is certain: the memory of the fallen climbers lives on. Jer McDonald, affectionately known as the Guardian of the Mountain, made history as the first Irishman to summit K2. Pemba, one of the survivors, reflects on the tragedy and said, "If everyone turned back after the Serbian climber fell down, I think there would have only been one death on the mountain instead of 11. If you have followed this story to this point, I would like to say a big thank you. If you like this kind of story, don't forget to hit the like button and leave a comment below. For more of this type of content, please click on the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell so you will be notified when another video is posted. Until next time, be cautious and don't ever lose your sense of